Greetings and welcome to the inaugural video of RTS Roulette. And since I hate videos front-loaded with a bunch of bullshit graphics and crap that don't matter, I'm gonna try to keep the explanation for this short. All I'm doing is picking random RTS games out of my collection and doing a little video on them. Pretty simple. And for this first episode, I drew Sun Age Battle of Elysium. Kind of excited to play this. I bought it on a Steam sale and never got around to playing it, never really had a good excuse to check out the campaign, learn the whole game, you know. Because I have no idea what the campaign is. It could be a really long, fucking drawn-out bore fest, I guess to put it nicely. Or it could be really fun. I might have to check that out later, but yeah, I'm not going to do a full campaign playthrough on an RTS game I'm not familiar with. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. The only kind of RTS games I think I could just dive into the campaign on and do recordings for would be something like StarCraft 2, to where I haven't played it, but enough people have said good things about it that it can't be that bad. All that being said, I did play a couple of skirmishes to familiarize myself with the controls, because there's no real way to do a first look at an RTS game unless you just want to show the training mode or some shit like that, which who the fuck wants to watch any of that? Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at Sun Age. The first thing you may have noticed is that there's 4 resource types. You got your red, your green, your blue, and your yellow. This is kind of an interesting RTS element because you need yellow, for example, to build tanks, so if I cut an enemy off from their yellow resources, I'm basically cutting off a part of their tech tree. Another important thing to note is that power is not really a resource in this game. You have a limited power, but you have to keep everything connected together. So somebody can cut off your power by slicing your line, but they can't take out your power entirely. You'll always have power at your command center. Another important thing to note is that your unit cap and resource cap are dictated by how many silos you have. So if you don't build any silos, you can't really build up your base. I find this approach interesting because it kind of limits what you can do as far as rushing goes. I mean, you could get a commando group and rush out right away and take out their silos and really screw them over, or you could build up a bunch of silos right away and try to get a big-ass army going. So if you're into RTS games that put a big focus on resource management, this may be right up your alley, because that's basically the name of the game here. For example, one strategy you could use is to cut the enemy off from their yellow resources, gather up your own yellow resources, and start building a bunch of heavy units to attack them with. Of course, if your opponent built a bunch of defensive towers and those destroyed all of your infantry, then you would be at the disadvantage, so you have to be quick if you want to do that kind of stuff. The resource management in this game kind of reminds me of Age of Empires and Warcraft, where you can cut an enemy off from certain resources and totally screw them over for the rest of the game. On the same end, it kind of has a command and conquer thing going for it, to where defensive towers are a big deal. You got to build a grid to make sure everything's powered and online, but then they took out the power plants and kept the silos in. You know, the more I think about it, it's really just a mix of every single RTS game I've ever played, which, honestly, I'm not too sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'd have to spend more time with this game to find out for sure, but so far I'm enjoying it, at least for the price. As of the time that I'm recording this, it's $17.99, but I got it on sale for $5, so yeah, wait for it on Steam sale and pick it up if you like how it looks. I don't think you could really go wrong with this one. I guess if I had to rate it by price, buy it for $18 if you got a bunch of money left over and you just want to buy a new RTS game to play, but wait for it to go on sale if you want a new RTS game but really don't feel like spending any money on it. I have taken a brief look at the campaign and it feels pretty fun so far. The lore looks interesting, I like the graphic design, the voice acting's pretty fun, everything's kind of nice, but, you know, until I play the whole campaign, I really can't judge it, so if you're looking for a good single-player RTS experience, I would recommend Red Alert 3, Command & Conquer Generals, Command & Conquer 3, StarCraft, all that good stuff, since those games are cheaper right now and they're pretty fucking good. But if you're looking for another single-player RTS experience and you've already played all those games and you got a bit of money to spare, this could be a good gamble. At least the first 3 campaign missions I played were pretty fun. They weren't anything too complex, but they taught you the game well enough and they had some interesting story and voice acting. It's a little bit on the budget side, but not in a bad way. In fact, I had enough fun on the first 3 missions that I'm definitely going to play it more and see where it all goes, but again, I can't recommend it until I play it all the way through, but if I do like it, you'll probably see me start a playthrough on it for this channel, because this is a pretty cool game. That being said, if you're looking for a multiplayer RTS game, you might want to avoid this one, because I don't see many players online. It seems to have a very small player base, so unless you buy like a 4-pack and have a buddy to play with, you might want to save your $17 and buy StarCraft 2 or Age of Empires 3 instead. I mean, considering that they have a lot of people playing the game. Plus, the lack of players doesn't really bode well for my expectations for this game as a multiplayer game. It could have a lot of balance issues, which I can't say it does for a fact, but That's one of the first things that gets people to stop playing games like this. Another thing that may interest somebody or turn somebody off from this game is that the controls are a little bit different compared to a standard RTS game. For example, if you want to select your units like you do in any other RTS game, you actually have to hold down Shift, then highlight them. I actually had to look that up online because the campaign doesn't cover that in the first 3 missions, and I went through about 2 or 3 skirmishes thinking, what the fuck's wrong with the controls in this game? Then I Googled it, figured out the problem, and I've been having a lot more fun with it since then. It's not really a bad choice either. The way that this game works is that you can bunch units together in groups, right? So if I have, say, 10 infantry on one side and 5 infantry on another, I can combine them into one big mass and they work like one giant unit, which is pretty nice, although I don't think that there's anything like toxins or AoE explosions or anything like that, so I'll have to play this game a bit more before I decide whether or not I like that mechanic or not, but I'm finding it pretty interesting. I like the fact that managing my infantry is not difficult. There seem to be some other cool elements to that too. For example, the Federation faction that I'm playing as has a commando unit that you can build to put into a group like that gives them some damage bonuses and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it seems there's a lot of depth to that I don't quite understand yet, but I'm looking forward to learning about it. I'd love to spend some more time with this game and figure all that stuff out. Maybe there's a really cool commando rush you can do. You know, build a commando, put them in a group of infantry, then rush on in. That would be pretty badass. There's a lot of unit upgrades too. For example, if I build a science lab, I can give my infantry sniper rifles. Now, they don't always have the sniper rifles out, but if I hit the A key, they'll go into sniper mode, which turns them into an anti-infantry unit. The anti-tank infantry also has EMP grenades, and there's a lot of other stuff that I haven't explored yet, but it all looks pretty interesting. And that's pretty much all that I know about the game. You know, I haven't tried it online yet, so I can't comment on the netcode or anything like that, and I can't comment on the story because I've only done 3 missions, but so far I'm having a pretty good time with it. But that's all that I have to say about this game. I have a lot to learn about it before I can start commentating on it in any kind of professional manner, so I'm just going to focus on stomping the shit out of this bot. I'm doing pretty good on resources so far, but I want some more of that blue stuff since I need that to build silos and most of my buildings and infantry and just about everything in the game. The other resources are important too, but I noticed that most things cost a combination of 2 separate resources, so if I have just one blue resource and I spend all my yellow, then I'm not going to have enough for infantry and vehicles, which could be a problem. Seems like a really risky but also equally important place to capture. If I can get those blue resources, like I said, I'll have a lot of infantry, but to get a collection factory up there and get the nodes built to power that area up, that's kind of risky. They could blow that place up before I could get defenses up, or they could take out the node, then blow it up, and then blow up the defenses that I spent a bunch of money on. It may actually be a really stupid move going for that. I could lose a lot of money that I could have just spent on infantry and other cheap units. I do know one thing, I can't just build a bunch of defensive towers along the node line. If I do that, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's probably not the most effective way to do things. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You know, you should probably have some kind of mobile defense force ready, a bunch of quick-moving vehicles and that kind of stuff, a bunch of hit-and-run type vehicles to come in and at least mitigate some of the damage. Because if they blow up a node, it's not that big of a deal as long as you can get it back up online, but yeah, it could be a little bit of a problem. Thinking about it, it might be more cost-effective to build a bunch of ground units and build some extra nodes so that I have 2 connections going over there. That way, if they blow up one, the other one can continue powering it. But again, I don't know if that's a good strategy either, so I'm just going to go for the most simple thing possible. Mainly because it seems to be the most cost-effective way to go about this, and if you don't have a good plan, at least try to be frugal, so if it all goes to shit, you don't lose a bunch of money. Then again, maybe you can build power plants, and maybe I'm taking a really stupid route of doing this, but I haven't seen any power plants, and it'd be really weird that you could build all these electric nodes and having those being a big gameplay element if you could just build a power plant. That kind of defeats the purpose when you think about it. So I'm just running on the assumption that I have to do this. May as well get a second war factory up too. Always good to have extra production. I got all this yellow resource here. I'm about to get some more blue, hopefully. So, if everything goes well, I should be able to pump out a whole shitload of units. You know, now I'm starting to wonder, is it more efficient to just send a bunch of gatherers out there to get that stuff, or should I try to keep building plants next to them? Because for the cost and risk of keeping the nodes up and everything, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of reward for that. At least the resource gatherers can run away, and if the nodes go down, they don't just stop and get their asses kicked, so yeah, I think building exterior bases in this game is probably a little bit more risky than, say, Command & Conquer Generals, to where it's not that big of a deal at all. Yeah, I'm going to have to research that if I keep playing this game, because if building a bunch of silos and a bunch of gatherers is cheaper than building a bunch of nodes and another collection plant, then yeah, this is the most backwards-ass way of doing this. Not just because of the risk, but also because it's probably financially unsound. What I should do is probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe get my plant out there as far as I can without stretching my base too thin. At least that makes more sense to me the more I think about it. But then again, I've already built the plants and the nodes, so there's really no turning back right now. Because I only get half of the money back for selling this shit, so I'm either going to get a huge reward for a good strategy, or I'm going to lose a bunch of money for doing something stupid. Oh, well, never mind, there's my answer. There's a bunch of green dots next to my little resource thing I built, so yeah, I lost a bunch of money for doing something stupid. Also, the controls are still giving me some shit. I mean, I'm holding down shift and clicking over them, selecting them, but I don't think it's selecting them. It's hard to tell. I'm used to the little life bars popping up like in Command & Conquer or just about every other RTS game, but either I'm not doing it right or I'm just not picking up on the visual cues here. It's kind of difficult to tell. Yeah, I guess that would be my main complaint, is that the controls for this one are... I can't say that they're bad because I don't quite know yet. I need to spend some more time to make sure that it's not some kind of weird inherent glitch that the game has, but it's definitely not intuitive. I can say that much. Yeah, you know, thinking about it, I haven't ran into this kind of issue with any other RTS game. I picked up Grey Goo, played that just fine. I'm sure if I started up StarCraft 2 right now, I wouldn't have any issues, but this game's giving me some shit as far as controls go. I mean, I'm not throwing out the possibility that I'm just doing it wrong, but I'm also not throwing out the possibility that it may be kind of broken. Or maybe poorly designed's a better choice of words, but then again, like I said, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I gotta spend some more time with this game before I can really judge it. But yeah, as far as my early impressions go, the controls for this game are unnecessarily complicated for what it is. At least to me, it seems kind of odd that the default selection method that you would use for any other RTS game has to be activated by holding down shift. Something just doesn't seem right about that. Like backwards, I guess is the best way to put it. It seems backwards. I guess to compare it to an FPS game, it's not backwards like inverted aim, it's backwards like if I had to hold down control to look up and down. It just feels like they're making me hold down a button for no good reason. It's giving me that feeling I get when I go to a friend's house and I play their copy of Command & Conquer, or I play their copy of a computer game and the controls are all fucked up and I just can't quite wrap my head around it. I feel like the developer's making me play with their controls. There's probably a way to change that, and if there is, I'm gonna fucking change it, because I don't want to have to hold down fucking left shift the whole fucking time I play this game. That's ridiculous. I mean, why would I want to use group select just to select individual platoons of units instead of multiple platoons of units? It doesn't make much sense from a design standpoint. I mean, I'm not a game designer or anything like that, but this is kind of confusing. At least I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't hold down left shift to select individual platoons rather than having to hold down left shift to just select everything like you normally would. There's got to be a reason for it, right? I mean, outside of bad game design. Because the rest of this game feels really professionally made. I don't think that they do something like that on purpose. Unless they just really hated Command & Conquer and other RTS games and wanted to do something different just to be different. But, you know, doing that for the controls is probably the worst possible fucking thing you could do. If you want to be different, just add another weird-ass faction like the GLA and Command & Conquer Generals. They don't have to use any power. That's different. That's interesting. Making me learn a different control set just to play your game like every other RTS that's out there, then that's oddly selfish, maybe even a little bit egotistical. I think one of my biggest pet peeves for any game is when they don't let you customize the controls, because every game can do that. There's no reason that you can't swap a command out for a different command on a different button, but there's a lot of games out there that I love, but they just don't let you change the controls, and it makes the game harder to play just because of that. You know, maybe you'll get a secondary type of control that you can select, But say, for example, you want to swap left click for right click, there's a lot of RTS games out there that are just basically saying, fuck you, deal with it, play it our way, which I really fucking hate that. You know, that's really not something that's difficult to set up. In fact, that could open up Motion Key or any of these other pieces of software and, you know, rig it to where I can manually swap it, but I really shouldn't have to install secondary software just to change the fucking control scheme. That's honestly fucking lazy. I mean, I say I'm not a game developer, but I did make an Asteroids clone and a Moonlander clone, and yeah, you could change the controls in there, no problem. It's just an extra menu that swaps a couple of values in the game. Probably one of the easier things you could possibly do to one of these games. Oh god, I'm stumbling on my words. You know, I haven't really checked out the options that much. Maybe I can swap that in this game, but yeah, I gotta get that off my chest. I fucking hate it when a game doesn't let you just change the fucking controls. That's the most simple thing you can fucking program in there. It's so lazy to leave that out. I mean, when it comes to something like that, the best case scenario is that the developer is just lazy or didn't have time to do it, but the worst case scenario is that the developer doesn't want you to play with a different button scheme, which sounds crazy, but there's some fucking crazy game developers out there. There's always going to be some kind of Phil Fish motherfucker out there who's like, no, you can't use that button. That's not how I designed the game, and I'm the game master. Of course, to reiterate, I'm not saying that about these game designers unless there really is no way to swap the buttons in this game, but yeah, there is a lot of that going around, especially in the indie game circuit. I mean, there's some people who can't take critique, but then there's other people who think they know what's best for you, and that's just fucking crazy, you know what I mean? If somebody wants to play Dark Souls on a fucking Guitar Hero controller, then they should be able to play Dark Souls with a fucking Guitar Hero controller. There's no reason to stop them from doing that unless you're just some kind of asshole. And I really mean that. I mean, I can understand some game developers not wanting mods in because it opens up the door to hacks and maybe they just want to keep their game as it is. But if you're a game designer and you don't put in customizable controls, you really are an asshole. You're a fucking bad person. Anyhow, that does it for this episode of RTS Roulette. I hope you're enjoying the new feature. I hope it actually makes sense. Maybe I end up dropping it later. Maybe I continue doing it. It's just kind of an experimental thing I'm doing right now. But that's all I have for now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.